The LA Clippers have a lot of decisions to make this summer, and one of them is going to be the future of Lawrence Frank. He's been criticized for a lot of moves, praised for a lot of moves, but given how he did this season and the presumed rift between he and Ty Lue, is Lawrence Frank the right man to be the general manager slash president of basketball operations for the Clippers going forward after what he's shown? Going to be talking about that by evaluating his moves and making the case both ways on today's Locked On Clippers.
You are Locked On Clippers, your daily Los Angeles Clippers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, sir. You are locking in with the Clips. Thank you for making Locked On Clippers the first listen of your day, your team every day. I'm your host, Darian Vaziri. Just finished my 18th season as a Clipper fan. You can also follow me on Twitter and Instagram at DimeDropperPod and subscribe to my own YouTube channel, Dime Dropper, for even more Clipper and LA sports content. Going live after every single night of playoff basketball. And this episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the best daily fantasy entry app on the App Store, and you need to go download it to go make your picks for the Western Conference and Eastern Conference Finals Games 1 that are set to start this week. And in this episode, I am going to be talking about Lawrence Frank. You know, I talked about in the last episode, Ty Lue. Should he be the guy going forward? Check that one out if you haven't. Now, Lawrence Frank. Now, I know he's had a lot of criticism, but there are also people that think that it's just the team being injured. He actually developed a really good roster. It was just the bad luck, coaching, whatever, that didn't get us to play the right way. So I'm going to be doing the same thing I usually do when it's just me up here trying to make a case for somebody. I'm going to, one, make the case for them, then in the second segment, against them, and then I'll give my opinion. But let's talk about why Lawrence Frank should come back as general manager and president of basketball operations. So Lawrence Frank, obviously, his first major move that I can recall off the bat was trading Blake, which at the time I was devastated, as most Clipper fans were, to see him go. It ended up being the right move, but it was very, very brutal to Blake Griffin, who had given so much to this organization and wanted to be a Clipper for life, to trade him. But they did it at the right time. You know, he was just starting to go through a lot of injuries, and he had about one really good year in Detroit in 2018-19, and then after that, he wasn't the same anymore. So we got Tobias for that, Avery Bradley, and I want to say we got Willie Reed, but I'm not 100% sure. I just know we got Avery Bradley and Tobias Harris. And, you know, that first season, or the rest of that 2018 season was tough, but in the 2019 season, I think we made some solid moves, like picking Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. I don't know how much say he had in that, or like if it was our scouting department or whatnot, but that was a fantastic pick. Now, there's also the Jerome Robinson pick, which has been highly criticized, that we could have picked Michael Porter Jr., and we fumbled the bag on that one because we were afraid of Michael Porter Jr.'s back issues at the time, which kept him out the entire first season of his career. But I love the SGA pick. And in 2019, you know, I think the Clippers roster overachieved, and then obviously in the middle of the season they traded away Tobias Harris, and we were acquiring picks, that pick from Miami and all that, and I was like, what are we doing? And everybody was telling me they're trying to make cap space so they can go for a big free agent in the summer. Now, let me just say this about that. At the time, you know, being a Clipper fan, you don't see free agents come to the Clippers. I was like, what are we doing? Like, we're trading our best player that's averaging 20 points a game, just made a game winner last night, for the possibility of getting Kawhi Leonard, the gamble of getting a guy who has a great chance of winning the championship this year in Toronto. I was like, what are we thinking here? And then the fact that in the summer, the Clippers and Lawrence Frank actually pulled it off, I mean, they deserve so much credit for that. Which goes back to the question, and I maybe should do my own episode on this, was the Kawhi Leonard move a mistake, getting Kawhi and Paul George? And I unequivocally, 100,000% think the answer is no, it was not a mistake. Anyone in their right mind would have tried to get Kawhi Leonard if they had the chance after winning a Finals MVP. Especially if you're a franchise like the Clippers, who are second tier in their own city, have never gotten a free agent before, and had never made it past the second round at the time. You have to make a move for that. For Kawhi Leonard to even want to consider the Clippers, like if you go back to LeBron's decision in 2010, the Clippers were on the list. He was taking a meeting with us, but you knew he was never going to join the Clipper organization with Donald Sterling at the helm. LeBron's not a dumb guy. So I'm not saying Kawhi's a dumb guy, obviously. He's coming into a totally different organization. So for Lawrence Frank to actually pull off the Kawhi Leonard move to get him to come to LA, whether it took all those picks and SGA to get him, and he and Paul George, it was insane. Like, everybody was singing Lawrence Frank's praises after that. So to go back and say he gave up too much, he shouldn't have traded SGA, he shouldn't have done it, is very revisionist history to me. He made a huge move. He's going to gamble in the middle of the season by trading away Tobias Harris for cap space and picks, and then he got Kawhi Leonard and Paul George as a result. I don't know what went into those negotiations, but I'm just telling Clipper fans this right now. If we hadn't gotten Kawhi and the Lakers had gotten him, that would have set the Clippers back 10 years. For them to get him, have 3 stars, unless it flamed out miserably for them, but for them to have 3 superstar players and us have 0 after an era where we really did everything right and they did nothing right, it would have just been a disaster. Like, it would have just been us going back to square one. And, I mean, I wouldn't say square one because we don't have Donald Sterling, but it would have just put us in a position that we would not be selling out anymore. We wouldn't be a talk of the town at all. And the Lakers would have this super duper team that looks like the Warriors that we just saw in terms of on paper. But thankfully, Lawrence Frank, I don't know what he did to negotiate and sway Kawhi. Obviously, I mean, getting Paul George and getting him a second star was probably that, but he went out and pulled it off. Nobody expected Paul George, who had just signed an extension the previous summer, to be traded or to be going to a different team. And for Lawrence Frank to pull that off, he deserves a lot of praise. Now, the first season, I honestly think that, getting Marcus Morris in the middle of the season was kind of a panic move. It was like, oh, the Lakers got Markieff Morris. They seem like they're kind of strengthening at the margins. We need to do something to get, to increase our roster to go up against them. And I felt like we were making moves just to counter the Lakers as opposed to focusing on ourselves, who were doing pretty well, even with Mo Harkless in the starting lineup. But that season, I don't blame Lawrence Frank at all for roster construction. 2020, we just choked in the bubble, and Paul George was never healthy all year. And then 21, he realized that, we need a backup rim protector. We can't just rely on Zoo. So he traded Montrezl Harrell, let him walk. We didn't offer him a new contract. I was very pro that move. We ended up getting Serge Ibaka, which at the time we thought was the perfect move. He sadly just could never stay healthy for the Clippers. But you saw in the first 2 games, I remember we played Denver on Christmas, and we saw what kind of threat having a pick-and-pop big man was. We haven't really replaced Serge Ibaka. And then the other moves we made, trading Lue for Rondo, a lot of people didn't like that move. I still to this day think it was a good move because Lue was taking away from the team. People don't want to go back and remember it, but he was doing very similar things to Reggie Jackson. He was ball stopping. He was just running pick and roll every single time without giving it to anybody, and he wasn't making shots. He wasn't playing defense. He wasn't going for any rebounds. When Rondo came in, he increased our basketball IQ. He was amazing in the regular season. He was really good in the games in Dallas, especially Game 3. It just Game 5, from Game 5 of the Dallas series onwards, he wasn't good anymore. But what happened was he was so bad that at least Ty Lue took him out, and that allowed other guys to shine, and he was still a presence on the bench, motivating guys and being smart. And I'll always say this, there's no coincidence that the one time we had Rondo on our team, the one season we had him was our best in the history of our franchise in terms of the playoffs. So I'm not going to go against that. I think that was a perfectly fine move. Obviously, firing Glenn Rivers, great move. Bringing in Ty Lue, great move. So 2021, I don't think anybody, and also getting Reggie Jackson middle of the 2020 season, I think that was pushed more by Paul George. And I think they didn't really see Lou Williams as a backup point guard, which I think was a little bit of a questionable move at the time. And then extending Reggie and extending Paul George, I had a little bit of criticism about that, considering Paul George hadn't played well in the bubble. For them to extend him like that was just questionable, but he played better after the contract, I will say. So I don't know about that one. Let me know what you think of that. Should Paul George have been extended after the bubble? But 2021, no problems with the roster at all. 2022, we let go of Patrick Beverley. That's because he wasn't available enough. I honestly didn't mind that move at all. We bring in Eric Bledsoe, who, was not great anymore, but he was playing pretty decent ball off the bench before he got traded. Then the trade to get Robert Covington and Norman Powell was just an absolute fleece. I think you'd have to think that as of the first couple of seasons through 2022, Lawrence Frank had really done all the right things. I mean, Isaiah Hartenstein was a huge gem as well. And then obviously we go to this season where we did not bring back Isaiah. We didn't want to offer him the mid-level exception. Instead, we went for John Wall. Again, I think that was because of Ty Lue, because of the players more than anything. And I think, there is that argument of GM versus player empowerment versus coach, where you say, oh, but you are the coach. I'm sorry, you're the general manager. You're the president of basketball operations. You make the decisions. You can overrule a player. You shouldn't be so easily swayed. And I think there's absolutely some validity to that. But when a player and a coach that have done really well for your franchise and organization are coming to you with the recommendation or coming to you speaking highly of somebody, why would you oppose them so much? That's my only thing with that. So, yeah, I think the John Wall move was a mistake, and I think they know it was a mistake. But if you're telling me you think Lawrence Frank should be fired just off of that, a lot of people said that he didn't improve the power forward position. Look, at the time, we didn't see Marcus Morris play like trash in the playoffs. We didn't see Nicholas Batum play like trash in the playoffs. Robert Covington was amazing last season. So it's very hard to say we should have upgraded the power forward position going into this season when those guys hadn't shown crazy signs of decline just yet. So overall, the case for Lawrence Frank is he hasn't done anything wrong with the roster, really. He has just had bad luck with injuries because anytime Paul George and Kawhi Leonard are out, and by the way, he drafted Terrence Mann too. I want to say that was a good pick. And Amir Coffey wasn't bad either. And Brandon Boston also I think is going to be a good pick. But, it's not his fault that everybody gets injured on the Clippers, And Ty Lue made some decisions with the rotation this year. And clearly you could tell Lawrence Frank, from what we heard, he wanted Terrence Mann to play more. He wanted to go for a more wing-heavy approach. So, we know that Lawrence Frank might have a different lens than Ty. But anyway, that's my argument for him, is that there's been a lot of injuries. He's actually developed what we all called the deepest roster in the league. So many good players. And it just didn't work out in the end because of lack of health. But coming up, going to be talking about why you would think maybe Lawrence Frank got too much credit and he should not be brought back. Going to be talking about it all coming up. But before I do that, I got to tell you about Prize Picks. And Prize Picks is doing something very special lately, and that is their Superflex promotion. Every day of the NBA playoffs or finals, one Prize Picks user will win a chance at becoming a millionaire. One entry placed after 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time will be randomly selected each day, and whoever placed that entry will be given a 6-pick flex with the following payouts. If you get 4 correct picks, you get $16K. If you get 5 correct picks, you get $80K. And if you get 6 correct picks, you get $1 million. Full details can be found at prizepicks.com/million. You must opt in at this link to be eligible for the $1 million entry. Once you opt in, all you have to do is play the game like normal, and you could be the lucky winner. And Prize Picks, all you got to do for it is pick 2 to 6 players and predict if they will score more or less than their Prize Picks projection. You can win up to 25 times your money on any entry, and it's not competing against anyone else. It's just you versus the projections available. And Prize Picks offers projections on any sport that you watch. That includes the NBA, the MLB, the NHL, and more. Entries can be made in 60 seconds or less. They're that easy, safe and fast withdrawals, and currently operational in over 30 states and Canada. Just download the PrizePicks app or go to prizepicks.com to sign up and play daily fantasy sports. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with the promo code LOCKEDON. If you deposit $100, PrizePicks will give you $100. If you deposit $50, PrizePicks will give you $50. Don't forget to enter the promo code LOCKEDON and sign up for an instant deposit match up to $100. All right. So let's look at Lawrence Frank and some of the moves he's made that you can consider questionable. I think the biggest one, I really don't think that through 2021, 2022, and 2020, he was at fault for anything. I don't think anybody would say that. It's really just been this year where he's come under some heat. And I think the first big thing was letting go of Isaiah Hartenstein. I think not having a backup center was fairly naive from the front office. But I really want to think that was Ty Lue pushing that because he was so small ball heavy in a lot of games last year, late in the season, and of course in the 2021 playoffs. So I thought maybe they thought we don't need a true backup center. We'll just have Moses Brown and Musa Diabate for insurance just in case, but we're okay. Now that was a mistake. John Wall coming, what they should have seen, what Lawrence Frank should have seen, is that we had a logjam at guard. You knew Ty wasn't going to start Kennard, and you knew Ty wasn't going to start, what's his name, Norman Powell. Actually, you didn't know that at the time. And before they did that, I mean, John Wall and Kennard coming off the bench, it actually looked a little bit better. But once you saw that Norman Powell was going to come off the bench, then you had a logjam at guard with John Wall, Norman Powell, and Luke Kennard. And that's when our lineups would just get too small when you played all three of them coming off the bench. So, yes, it was a mistake. But then they made the trade at the deadline, which I actually didn't even mention in segment 1. And those are all good moves in my opinion, except there's one that you might question. And that is the Eric Gordon for Luke Kennard move. We also lost the pick swap in that. We would be picking like 16th in this draft and instead of 30th, and we don't have our picks in the future. So that move was a mistake in hindsight. The thing was they wanted to go all in. They wanted to get an experienced player that can put a little bit more downhill rim pressure, won't get targeted as much defensively, and they got that. We did get that. Eric Gordon had some games that Luke Kennard just can't have in terms of his all-around impact. The thing about Eric Gordon is he only has one more year left on his deal. He's 35. He's about to be 35, and it's like, we just went all in for this year and gave up one of our best young players that's an absolute sniper and his best years are yet to come. I think that was just not a good move, personally. And Ty Lue, part of it's Ty Lue took his confidence away shooting the ball. You know, his wavering minutes. The thing about Luke Kennard is if you give him consistent minutes, he will become a sniper like you saw for Memphis. That's what he was last season. But when inconsistent minutes, he loses confidence, gets a little bit timid. So in retrospect, I think we absolutely made a mistake with the Luke Kennard move. It was to go all in, and if we had won the championship, it would have been validated, but we didn't. We couldn't stay healthy. So to go all in, my defense is this. You could argue, how would he know that we're going to get injured? Eric Gordon still could have been big next to Kawhi and Paul George. Absolutely fair. The only thing is this. With the way this season was going, I'm not going to lie, it's pretty naive to think we would have won the championship. It's pretty naive to just not have, not save anything for the following seasons. Because Luke Kennard, it's not like he's a guy that has to be given a bunch of on-ball reps to develop without Kawhi and Paul George. He can play next to them and be totally fine. He's actually the perfect player to play with stars because he's going to be able to hit wide open shots. So, if anything, my biggest criticism of Lawrence Frank would be not upgrading the power forward spot, not keeping Isaiah Hartenstein, and then trading for Eric Gordon. Other than that, though, I mean, you can argue about the re-signing Paul George and giving him a contract after the bubble where he played like trash, but you let me know. Those are my arguments, though, against Lawrence Frank. But coming up, going to be giving my opinion of what I think of Lawrence Frank and the job he's done and how I trust him going forward. Going to be talking about all that coming up. All right. So now it's time for me to make the choice. Given everything I've said about Lawrence Frank's track record with the Clippers, do I want him to return? The answer is yes. I personally don't think Lawrence Frank did much wrong. I know I have some guys in my comments here on Locked On Clippers YouTube, which you need to subscribe to and hit the notification bell too, of course, that talk about Lawrence Frank needs to go. I don't trust the roster he built. He went out and got Westbrook. But Westbrook, again, was pushed by the players. You can argue that he caved, but it ended up working out in that sense. The only bad moves, as I said, I think were the Isaiah Hartenstein move. And at the time, I really disagree with giving Paul George the extension, but he played really well after that. And then we did re-sign Kawhi. We did get Kawhi. The point is, I think Lawrence Frank has done so many better moves than bad moves. So many. The fact that he got Kawhi Leonard and Paul George, I never can hate on him ever for that. Because he did something that nobody thought we could do. Nobody. I don't want to sit here and act like the 3% of the world that was saying, oh, I think Kawhi's going to go to the Clippers. No, I had people telling me there was never a chance he was going to come to the Clippers because it's the Clippers. So for Lawrence Frank to get a star there, that move, as Howard Beck said when he came on the show, that could have long-term implications on Clipper history that, exceed this era. Just by seeing a free agent superstar choose to go to the Clippers over the Lakers. So Lawrence Frank and then the Norman Powell Rocco move was such a fleece. We re-signed all our players that we really like. As I said, Isaiah Hartenstein was really the only one. But I think Lawrence Frank is not at fault. The reason why he didn't upgrade the power forward spot is because he didn't see Marcus Morris, Nicholas Batum, and Robert Covington get exposed in the playoffs. And if you want to talk about last season, they didn't have bad individual seasons. They didn't. Yes, you could have probably gotten a more athletic one, but having Kawhi Leonard and Paul George healthy mitigates a lot of that stuff. And ultimately, that's what it comes down to. It's not about the other guys on the roster when your two best players cannot stay healthy. It's not. Now, Lawrence has a decision to make. He clearly had a rift with Ty Lue this season on many concepts related to the team. Small ball, how small we go, which guys play more and which guys don't. So we'll see what the decision is. Ty Lue's been getting a lot of smoke from other coaches or other franchises. Phoenix Suns just fired Monty Williams, and now they're saying he's a favorite for their job. Ty Lue's currently on a contract. But, they can still offer him things. And I guess maybe we can make an episode on what offer might lure Ty Lue away. But Milwaukee, Toronto, and Phoenix are all going to try to put their name in the ringer for Ty Lue if he gets relieved of his duties. And maybe even if he doesn't try to go for him. So Lawrence Frank has a decision to make with Ty Lue this summer. And I'm going to let him make that. But in terms of Lawrence Frank, I think he's done a perfectly fine job. And one thing I like about Lawrence is he's active. He didn't let us just keep Reggie Jackson. He saw things were going badly, and he got Bones Highland. That's going to end up being a good move. Not every GM hits 100% of the time. That's what you have to remember. And I think he has hit the majority of the time. So therefore, I think Lawrence Frank is the right man going forward for the Clippers with Michael Winger, who I don't know much about, as the actual GM alongside him. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at DimeDropperPod. Subscribe to my own YouTube channel, Dime Dropper, for more Clipper and LA sports content. Make sure to subscribe to Locked On Clippers and comment on today's pin question. Do you think Lawrence Frank should be back as GM, and what do you make of his time so far? I know his technical title is President of Basketball Operations, but it's the same as what we used to call GM. Thank you so much. The age-old proverb continues. Go Clippers.